Welcome to Larry's Dead by Daylight Pinhead Tips and Tricks Guide. Today I will be teaching you how to play Pinhead and learn to become good with him, without getting too deep into the complicated numbers, of course. Pinhead is referred to as the satellite in-game, but I will call him Pinhead mostly. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, first, let's start off with his attributes. Pinhead is a killer that moves at a velocity or speed of 4.6 meters a second, and has a 32-meter terror radius. He is also a tall killer, so he can be seen over a majority of tiles. In return, this lets him see over a majority of tiles as well. Next, we are going to talk about his 3 perks: Deadlock, Hex Plaything, and Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain. We are going to start off with Deadlock, then Plaything, then Gift of Pain. Okay, now let's talk about Deadlock. After a generator is repaired, the entity blocks the generator with the most progress for 30 seconds. This is a good perk to have because it slows down the progress of generators. This perk will only activate 4 times a match, despite there being 5 generators. In simple terms, a survivor completing the first generator blocks the second one blocks the third one blocks the fourth one, and the fourth one blocks the final one. There is no generator that blocks the first generator. Now let's talk about Hex Plaything. Hex Plaything is an extremely underrated perk. What it does is, after hooking a unique survivor for the first time, Hex Plaything applies to that survivor. They suffer from the Oblivious status effect until they cleanse their respective totem. The Oblivious status effect means they can't hear the terror radius until the status effect goes away. Up to 4 totems can be activated by Plaything per game. For the first 90 seconds of hooking a new survivor, only the survivor that is cursed by the hex can cleanse their own totem. The totem is blocked by the entity for all other survivors for this duration. This clears up a big misconception that only the obsession can cleanse these totems. This is not true. Any survivor can cleanse their totem. After the 90 seconds is up, anyone can cleanse it. If a survivor cleanses someone else's totem, the survivor affected by that totem will lose the Oblivious status effect. There is one more thing about Hex Plaything that is part of this perk. A survivor can see their own totem when within 16 meters of the totem. And now Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain. At the beginning of a trial, 4 hooks are turned into Scourge Hooks. This does not stack with other Scourge Hook perks. The only thing that stacks are the effects it brings. When a survivor unhooks another survivor from one of these 4 Scourge Hooks, they will be inflicted with the Hemorrhage and Mangled status effect. Hemorrhage means a survivor has a regression effect on healing, losing 7% of their progress a second whenever they are not being healed. Mangled means that it takes a survivor 25% more time to heal. This is a 4% second increase at base. These status effects are removed once the survivor is healed. Once they are healed, they receive a 9% speed debuff to healing and repairing generators until injured again. A big misconception about this is that the debuff is given at the same time as the status effects, which is not true at all. The 9% speed debuff is also only given once per trial to each survivor. So once a survivor is freed from the 9% debuff, that survivor is immune to the 9% debuff for the remainder of the trial. Hey, Editor Larry here. Scourge Hook has been, well, Gift of Pain, I should say, has been changed to 13%. I just wanted to say that, because I didn't feel like re-recording the entire thing. Now that the perks are out of the way, let's talk about Pinhead and what his power actually is. Number 1, the Gateway. This gateway is a portal that can be placed exactly in the same manner as Nurse. Placing the gate will shift control from Pinhead to the gate. This gate has a maximum of 16 meters at which it can be placed, and has a marker for where the gate is placed. This gate can go through walls, and even through floors and ceilings. Number 2, The possessive chain. After the gateway is placed, the player can release a chain that starts out at a speed of 10 meters per second and gradually increases to a speed of 40 meters per second over the course of 4 seconds. Hitting a survivor with this chain will attach 3 chains to the survivor and bring your control back to Pinhead. Canceling the gateway, using the chain for too long, or colliding with an object with the possessive chain will bring your control back to Pinhead without being rewarded with a chained survivor. Number 3. The lament configuration. The lament configuration is a box that appears randomly on the map. Where it spawns depends on where the survivor is and where the killer is. There are set spawns for each map for the lament configuration. Whenever the lament configuration respawns, it will be at a minimum 40 meters away from the killer, while a minimum of 16 meters away from the survivors. This acts as another objective for survivors to do. They will eventually have to solve the box. If left alone, the box will trigger a chain hunt, where passive chains spawn and chain the survivors if they get hit by the chains. Similar to the possessive chain, but only one chain. A survivor carrying the box will also cause a chain hunt, but only for the survivor that is carrying the box. They will also be inflicted with the oblivious status effect. The survivors can see the box's aura while the killer cannot. The killer can down a survivor to pick up the box, or they can stumble across it. Anytime the killer picks up a box, 3 things will happen. Firstly, a chain hunt will start regardless on if it was starting before or after. Secondly, all 4 survivors will be chained with 3 chains. Lastly, all 4 survivors will scream or reveal their location. A survivor can solve the box. This will immediately reset the chain hunt, regardless if one is active or not. The Cenobite can teleport to the survivor that is solving the box while it's being solved. This will immediately bring you to the survivor and reset the chain hunt timer, as this would be unfair if it didn't. Number 4. Chained survivors. Anytime a survivor is chained, they can't run, fast vault, or leave through the exit gates. These chains are extremely fragile and can be broken pretty quickly by survivors. They are broken one at a time and immediately break on impact when a chain connects with the environment. It does respond though when it connects with the environment, or will reattach itself if it connects with the survivor. This is the reason why chains spawn when people usually think there are 3 chains, even though it depends on whether or not it is connected with the environment. The more chains that the survivor has attached to them, the more they get slowed down, up to a maximum of 3. Chains do not respawn if the survivor manually breaks them. Even though a chain hunt only attaches 1 chain at a time, it's still more rewarding than manually attaching chains to a survivor. This is because the Cenobite does not have to slow himself down in order to attach chains to the survivor. Now that we know how Pinhead works, let's get into how we can get better at each of these aspects of Pinhead. The gateway. Like I said, it functions exactly the same as Nurse. So if you main Nurse in the past, you should have some experience on that part of Pinhead. Now, where do we want to place the gate? Usually our best bet is in front of the survivor and the direction they are heading. This usually catches people off guard and you can lead a possessive chain into them as they run into you. In short words, you want to predict where they will go and sandwich the survivor between you and the gate, where if they run into the gate, they get hit by the possessive chain, or they turn around, you cancel and get a hit on them. There is one thing that Pinhead does better than Nurse, which is awareness. You can place a gate next to a generator when looking for a survivor without even getting close to it. The possessive chain. This is one of the most difficult things to control as Killer in Dead by Daylight, if not the hardest thing to control. The thing that will get you the most hits is if you turn directions as least as possible, and staying as calm as possible, for good measure. When going flying with the chain, even I do it. I sometimes freak out when I shoot the chain. But how do we adjust the aim of the possessive chain if we want to turn the chain as least as possible? The possessive chain. After placing the gateway, you have 6 seconds to fire. You can turn the camera during this time with less risk, and this will change the direction of which the possessive chain will go, and is the best time to adjust the aim of the possessive chain. But do not take too long, because survivors can make distance while you are adjusting. And the more distance between the gate and the survivor, the harder and less optimal it becomes to fire the chain. And if they get too far, it's better to cancel the gateway than to fire the shot. In short, the less distance you travel, and the less you turn with the possessive chain, the easier it will be to land the chain. The possessive chain. Turning. There are 2 types of turning. When turning the possessive chain, that I like to call light turning and heavy turning. Light turning is when you slightly turn, and heavy turning is when you turn your chain greatly. Light turning is mainly used for turning the chain into a survivor as they are dodging into it. Heavy turning is for when someone turns a corner and you turn to go around an object or wall. You can't really light turn after a heavy turn, but most people don't expect a pinhead to turn a corner with the chain, and some corners are clustered with a wall, so they can't dodge because they will run into the wall. So don't worry about them dodging too much. Chained survivors. All you have to do really is take the shortest route so you can get to the survivor before they break out of the chains. Sometimes when a chain breaks on the environment, it's a bad thing. Sometimes when a chain breaks on the environment, it's a good thing. Because when a chain breaks and respawns, it has a chance to reconnect with the survivor, and the combined distance that both chains take away from the survivor, the ones that broke on the environment and the one that respawned, is longer than the distance taken away from the survivor if they broke all 3 chains normally. However, I wouldn't intentionally break the chains as a killer. I just want you to know it's not always a loss when a chain breaks on the environment. The lament configuration. The best way to find the lament configuration is to stumble across it. Don't go looking for it. The only time you want to actually look for it is if you know the general area it's in, which is where the survivors are not. So aura perks that show survivors are your best bet on finding the box. The best perk for it, in my opinion, is Lethal Pursuer, because it shows you where the box cannot be at the same moment as it spawns. If the survivor is solving the box next to or close to you, or just happens to run into you, take advantage of that mistake and chase them for the down and the box. The lament configuration. Well, yes, you could just walk over to the box being solved and stop it in order to get the chain hunt. It's kind of risky as you need to take the most optimal route and give up what you're doing and sometimes not even make it to the box. This immediately becomes a different story with the double solve time add-ons. Teleporting is not something that should be done every time. There are 3 moments in which you should teleport. Firstly, whenever you are not chasing a survivor and the progress of the generators aren't going too fast. Second, whenever you aren't near the generators, like if you aren't paying attention and the survivor leads you to an area with no generators and a survivor solves a box next to the generators, you can use that as a way of getting back to the generators really quickly. And lastly, if you're chasing a survivor that's too good, teleporting to a different survivor may be a good idea. And the last part of this section of the video, how did I curve my chain to go over that one car in Gas Heaven?
I love doing that though.
What? Well, remember when I said to aim after you place the gate but before you fire the chain? What I did was aimed upwards, fired, and pulled down as much as I can, so it'd make an arch of going up, then going down, and into the survivor. How high you need to look depends on how tall the cover is. This also combines with turning the chain as least as possible. Now for the final part of the video. What add-ons are worthy enough for running on Pinhead? Let's start out with the brown add-ons. It is not acceptable to run the leather strip, the lively crickets. It is acceptable to run the burning candle. It is not acceptable to run the bent nail. Now his yellow add-ons. It's worth running, not this add-on, but the flickering television and the liquefied gore add-on. These 3 add-ons, the wriggling maggots, the spoiled meal, and the skewered rat, it is not worth running any of those 3. Now his green add-ons. It's worth running the torture pillar. It's worth running if you run with something else, the slice of Frank with Larry's remains. It's acceptable to run Larry's remains. It is acceptable to run Larry's blood if you are running it with the engineer's fang. Frank's heart is worth running. Now his purple add-ons. The original pain is worth running. The impaling wire is worth running. Greasy black lens is mostly for newer players, but it is acceptable to run even if you are experienced. Chatterer's tooth is not worth running. It is worth running. the pink lament configuration, and it is worth running, the Engineer's Fang. Well, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I worked really hard on it. In fact, this is the most effort I have ever put into a video. I hope this video helps you when playing Pinhead. And I'd like to ask what questions you have in the comments. I will answer every question you have related to Pinhead. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. The Possessive Chain. Chained survivors. All you have to do. I'm reading the wrong script. For the wrong part of the script.